Hey everyone, it's Ezra Dogteeth, and I'm gonna be talking about some lesbian books today that I think you should read. Let's kick it right off with the classic, Stone Butch Blues. This book is so important if you are a butch. I think all lesbians can relate to it, but there's a certain nuance that you can understand it better from if you are a butch. And I think it's a really important book, but it's also incredibly sad. And it is pretty triggering in some parts and just really difficult to read. But I think it is important to read and understand, especially if you are a butch and you're looking to connect more with butch culture and butches in the past. I will admit that this book isn't my favorite for like the writing style and like the merit as a piece of writing. I think it's so valuable as like a piece of historical fiction and like an account of what life was like, but the actual writing in it is like not the best. Like it's good and it gets the point across, but it's not particularly like moving or poetic in most of it. It's very sad and very powerful, and I think it's probably one of my top recommendations. Next recommendation is Naming the Waves. It's a contemporary lesbian poetry anthology by like around 30, I want to say, lesbian poets, and it was published in the late 80s, like right at the turn of the decade. And so it's a really good account of it's like contemporary but not necessarily modern. And I really like that because it has aspects of like older lesbian culture and more modern lesbian culture, and there's so many different writing styles in it, and I think it's a really valuable read if you like poetry. I find it really hard to find poetry that I relate to deeply as a lesbian, and I really like this one because you get a little taste of everything and so many different perspectives and so many different cultures, and yeah, it's amazing. Yes, that's right. I'm going to include erotica in this review. This is the only erotica book that I'm including because it's the only one that I've read. I found this. Oh yeah, it's called Breathless by Kitty Tsui. I think that's how you pronounce their name. I'm really bad at pronouncing names, so pardon me if I don't say everyone's like all the authors' names because I don't want to be a fool. Some of the stories in this book are really amazing and sexy, but some of them are a little too fucked up for me to read. So like keep in mind that some of them are like dark, but most of them are pretty good. Um, I really prefer I really prefer erotica like in written format because all lesbian porn sucks. So the last novel I'm going to be discussing is not really a novel, it's more of an anthology. I don't know the words. Um, it is Transgender Warriors by Leslie Feinberg, who also wrote Stone Butch Blues. This is an amazing book to read if you are trans or gender nonconforming or non-binary. It's really good. It explores the intersections of being trans and oppression and with race and class and sexuality and culture, and it's a really comprehensive guide and I really enjoy it. And it taught me a lot about not only trans culture but also history and the reasons for transphobia, which, spoiler alert, it's capitalism and cis people. That was a really simplified explanation, but like you'll learn a lot from this book. I highly recommend it. Now it's time to move on to comics. First up is a classic, My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness. It is cute, it's funny, it's accurate. I really like it. The art style is really nice. And it's just an interesting read. And it's a nice light read. You can read it pretty quickly. I think it took me probably an hour or two, maybe even less, to read the whole thing. But I think it's useful and it makes you feel less alone when you're a lesbian and you're really lonely, which aren't we all? This next one I would classify more as a feminist read than a lesbian read. It is Brazen, Rebel Ladies Who Rocked the World. This one, the author's name I really can't pronounce. Why is there so many vowels? I don't know what the accents mean. I'm sorry. I can't do it. But this is what it looks like. This is a fantastic book. It's a nonfiction book filled with lots of different comics. And each comic is a few pages long, and it explores the life story of a woman who, like, basically rebelled against the norms and changed society in some way. It has the stories of lesbians and trans women and artists and people from all walks of life. I really, really enjoy this. I cry reading, like, every story. Like, seriously, I'm like, I just love women so much. It's amazing. I really, really enjoy this book. I picked it up at, like, a local comic convention in my city, and it's just amazing. The art in it is fantastic. My favorite story, I got it right here. It's about the lady who created Moomin. I think that one's my favorite right now. It's just really inspiring to me because she, like, fucks off to, like, this little island at the end with her wife. It's amazing. I really highly recommend it. And this one, the cover has a really nice texture. I don't know if that makes a difference to anyone else, but I love when I'm just like, oh yeah, texture. This book is called Little Gods, and it's a comic in a beautiful, beautiful style about two women, although I think a case could be made that one or both of them is non-binary or gender non-conforming, because there's not really a society in this book. It's mostly about mythology and gods and the relationship between the two main characters. It is just so beautiful. I absolutely adore the art and the message and all the creatures in it. I really highly recommend this one. I don't know how easy it is to get because I bought it from the artist directly at a comic convention. So I really highly recommend it. It's gay, it's got mythology, it's got good art. And last but not least, possibly my favorite book of all of that I've reviewed today, Dykes to Watch Out For by Alison Bechdel. This is a great, great book. I got it for like $25, and it's like 400 pages long of just comics. You can see how dense they are too. It's fantastic. It follows like the life stories of like all these guys on the cover. Most of them are lesbians. I think there's one trans man and a few like men who are related to the story, but it's primarily focused on all these lesbians and all their different lives and their different struggles with politics and just living situations, and it's really, really good. It has tons of representation for lesbians of color, which I really appreciate. Most of them are actually lesbians of color, which I highly, highly appreciate, as you can see on the cover. It explores family life and relationships, and I think one of my favorite aspects is probably the political aspect, because, okay, it's really depressing actually, because it was written in the 80s, I think, question mark? I need to stop saying question mark out loud, it's so embarrassing. I did it in front of people and I was like, just say your question like a question, Ezra, what are you doing? Okay, so the copyright was in 2008, but most of this, I think, was written in the 80s and 90s. It was an ongoing series for a really long time, and this is just like a collection of all of the not all of the comics, but it's called The Essential Dykes to Watch Out For, so I think it's like which ones Allison picked to be together in the anthology. And it's pretty comprehensive. I really enjoy it. Alison Bechdel also has a book called Fun Home, which is an autobiography, and it's also a comic, which I highly recommend. I don't own it, but I have read it, so that's probably another one that I would add to this list. I would really recommend this one. I think every lesbian should read it. That's what I think. Just watching the characters grow and change and love each other and hate each other, it's really nice. Yeah. It's a good read. It makes me happy. I really especially like both the art style and just watching all the characters change and watching them interact with the world and watching the world change. It like mentions all the political situations that are happening. I won't spoil any of it for you, but it is the best book ever written. Just kidding. It's really good though.